Welcome to another episode of the Federal Newswire Lunch Hour Podcast with your host, Andrew Langer.
Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Lunch Hour with Federal Newswire. I'm your host, Andrew Langer. Joining me today, I'm very excited to have our guest on. His name is Alfredo Ortiz. He is the president and CEO of the Job Creators Network. He's been there since 2014. We're going to learn all about what the JCN is, because I'm very excited about this. But prior to joining JCN, I'm going to read this. This is how gauche I am. Alfredo was vice president of CSM Bakery Products Food Service Division, where he was responsible for increasing national account penetration fivefold and leading a major broker realignment and trade system implementation. He was also a consultant at the Boston Consulting Group here in their Washington office, and has worked in marketing, new product development, and corporate strategy for Georgia Pacific, Kraft, and others. He has his MBA from the University of Michigan, graduated from Pomona, as well with a bachelor's degree in economics. He's fluent in both English and Spanish. I'm not going to make you speak Spanish today because we'll show you how bad my Spanish is these days. But let's start here. So I was fortunate enough. So I was a lobbyist for the National Federation of Independent Business for many years. And worked on a lot of regulatory issues. I was fortunate enough to be invited up to an event that the Job Creators Network did on Capitol Hill a few months back. Okay. Your colleague Manny Rosales invited me up there. The announcement of the legislative agenda.
Yes.
Talk about that. Well, let's actually, before we get to what that is, tell us a little bit about the Job Creators Network.
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me. Very exciting. It's actually, believe it or not, it's now my 11th year on this organization. So time does fly. Wow. I actually, funny thing is I had a few predecessors before me in about the 2-year span that it actually was. So I kind of jokingly say that Bernie Marcus, who's our founder,
I get it,
must like me because I've done something right, I guess, for 10 years.
Nice.
So, but it's a great organization. I'm so proud and humbled really to lead it because it really represents the 33 million small businesses that are out there. And I don't care if they're Democrats, Independents, Republicans, Hispanic, Black, White, Asian. I mean, if you're a small business owner, you're going to get our advocacy work one way or another. Right. You're with NFIB, you know how important small businesses are 100%. To our communities, to our country. And when Bernie Marcus started this organization, he was a small business owner, believe it or not, before it was Home Depot and 425,000 people. He had one store in Atlanta. Yeah. And so he remembered all too well what it was like to be a small business owner. He opened basically the organization up under the Obama administration because it was dying at that point. Right. Heavy taxation, heavy regulation. And enter Biden, by the way, the administration, it's more of the same.
We're going to talk all about that.
So we really have been taking the lead on charging a lot of different things. You were at the American Small Business Prosperity Plan launch. That's right. Which really was a simple, common sense 8-point plan to help small businesses. A lot of those elements were pieces of legislation that really does exist in some way, shape, or form. I'm a marketer, so I just basically package it and put a bow on it to really sell a vision to the American public of what we can do for our small businesses. So that's pretty much what JCN is.
Well, the best entrepreneurs are the ones who look at the market landscape and whether or not it's the marketplace for products or the marketplace of ideas and see what's working and see what can be built upon. Right. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. But if you're finding a way to put things together to build a better mousetrap, I know I'm using all kinds of metaphors.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah. Well, no, that's exactly right. I mean, I jokingly say when I ran the Kraft cheese business, my job was to sell more cheese to more people more often for more money and to do it in 30 seconds.
Sure. Yes. So, it's interesting you say that because one of the things that has changed markedly, and we can talk about the threats facing small business and entrepreneurs, between now and going back to the Obama administration. But one of the things that really has changed in the last 15 years especially is the politicization of business. And you're right. Your constituency is neither Democrat nor Republican. It is, it's folks who are doing that. They're all facing the same challenges. Right. But talk about the businesses that are injecting politics into their business. I mean, there's a real peril that's at work here, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, really is kind of a big business story when it comes to that.
Sure,
the
yes,
whole
of course.
wokeism is real. Yeah. It's definitely there. I mean, A few years back, if you remember when Major League Baseball pulled out of Atlanta because of the supposed
the voting rights issue,
the voting rights issue that Kemp had signed into law.
Which of course, we know more people have voted ever in Georgia since those laws were enacted. But go ahead. Yeah.
So we sued Major League Baseball because of that pullout.
Interesting.
Because, of course, they had said that, it's Jim Crow 2.0 and all this stuff. And so, look, these large businesses are becoming these political arms of administrations that are Democrat run, unfortunately. And these small businesses, quite frankly, are kind of getting caught in the middle. And it's unfortunate. Now, obviously, there's some small businesses that believe in that.
But on the other hand, there is also opportunities for entrepreneurs out there. One of the examples I like to use is, so I'm a foodie. I like to do a lot of cooking. I used to be a huge devotee of a spice company called Penzeys Spices.
Okay.
Until the owner, Bill Penzy, came out and said, if you support the Trump administration, I don't want your business. And his sister, who ran a competing spice company called the Spice Palace, she said, I don't care what your political beliefs are.
Right.
I just want your money. I just want to sell you some spices.
Right.
So there are opportunities there aren't there for folks to say, something, listen, I don't care what your political persuasion is.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to sell you product X, don't I?
Yeah, absolutely. Case in point, we're actually putting on a conference in November.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm looking for items that are made in USA only.
Sure.
Because that's what I want to be able to promote. That's what I want to be able to give out. And so, yes, there's absolutely opportunities for smart entrepreneurs to take advantage of niche opportunities as well.
So let's talk about the challenges, because that's the thing that, one of the reasons why I became passionate about small businesses is this issue that small businesses, they face the government challenges, the red tape challenges differently than big businesses, don't they? Talk about that.
Yeah, if you look, for example, and by the way, Senator Ernst just introduced something last week called the Prove It Act.
Good.
Which is a great piece of legislation that I'm trying to promote anywhere I can.
Okay.
Definitely look it up. But basically, for all intent and purpose, what it does, it stops this one-size-fits-all mentality that exists in D.C., that one regulation needs to apply to any business, whether it's small or big. As you know, you were around probably with Dodd-Frank.
Oh, yeah.
Where 2,000 community banks went out of business because that really killed our small businesses, because the burden was so excessive on the smaller banks versus the larger banks that really could absorb it. And so,
of course,
the big banks just got bigger, and now we're seeing
this is what we used to say
again.
when I was lobbying for NFIB. If I saw big government and big business getting together, I knew I had to big run, to sort of deal with it.
Yep.
Actually, talk about that though, because you're right. The big banks just got bigger. One of the things, there's a difference between the way progressives and free market limited government types approach small business.
Yep.
The progressive side is really focused on access to capital. But it correct me if I'm wrong, when community banks go out of business, smaller businesses lose that access to capital, don't they?
Exactly.
Talk about that.
So it's actually pretty ironic that they talk about that's what they do.
Right.
Because in reality, for example, what's just been happening with Silicon Valley Bank, et cetera, is actually working quite against small businesses. And so 60% of small businesses are actually coming out of our regional community banks.
Right.
And so this idea, and frankly, I think this particular administration would be perfectly fine if we only had 5 national banks.
Which is insane. But go ahead.
So they can control it, right? Government control, basically nationalized banking system. And I honestly think they could care less if our community and regional banks went out of business. But unfortunately, small business will be hurt.
Because in the end, what they want to do is they want the SBA to be the ones giving out the loans directly,
or the post office,
Because that's exactly where I was going to talk about this, because a lot of folks don't understand that this is actually a thing.
Yeah, well, it's interesting if you just see what just went into effect, May 1st on the FHA, where you're actually charged the fee for good credits.
Yes.
I see this post office bank thing coming. Just around the corner, where basically it's to bank the unbankable.
Right.
Which is the craziest thought I've ever heard of.
Right. Instead of making it easier for small banks to form and provide those products. Yes.
Right. Exactly. So, but again, I don't think they truly appreciate or really want the success of small business. And I know I probably sound like a conspiracy guy.
No.
But I don't think they like it. And here's why I think. Because small businesses represent everything they detest.
Right.
Capitalism, free enterprise, meritocracy. You work hard. You can succeed in doing anything you want. You should have unlimited reward. This is totally antithesis of what the progressives believe.
They tried killing small businesses during the pandemic. The only ones that were allowed to be open were the big businesses.
Correct.
They didn't succeed in that, but yet they're still coming back.
And as you know, Biden inflation's absolutely killing them. It's still killing them. I hate the fact that Biden's out there saying, "Hey, come on, man! Look how great it is. The consumer's spending more. Things are going great." And I keep saying, "Wait a minute. They're spending more." Because they're paying more.
Yes.
Things cost more. They're getting less. This is not a good thing for the consumer.
I had a conversation yesterday. I had to go and pick something up at our local veterinarian's office and had a conversation about the concept of shrinkflation. The idea that the price of a good will stay the same, but they'll just serve less of it in the product.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me, and I urge everybody out there to do this in terms of your spending. You go and you look at, if you order stuff online, like for us, we have to order a specific kind of dog food for our dog. Watching how that's gone up 20% over the last year. And I go back and I look, and I only have to order dog food once every 6 months or so, but I go back and I look. And that's just it. Folks forget that the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, 2009, it wasn't just the collapse of the housing bubble. Right. It was also the run-up in gas prices that caused small businesses got caught in the squeeze. Right. Talk about that as small businesses getting caught in the squeeze on things. The issue of small businesses can't make the choices that consumers can make to not go and buy something, but they also don't have the economies of scale that big businesses do.
Well, and that's the big thing right there is the big business versus small business impact on inflation. And really what's been happening recently, supply chain issues, for example. Yeah. Big businesses, they get their supply chain. Like they get the stuff that they need. They get preferential treatment. They get preferential pricing, long-term contract pricing. So they get all of that, right? When you look at labor, they have an ability to pay more for the labor than a small business does, right? And when you think, of course, of the cost of the products, I mean, I have small business owners that are telling me they run a Mexican restaurant down in Florida. Okay. And they're saying, a case of avocados used to cost me $25.
Yes.
Now it's $100.
Wow.
Right? I mean, they're taking that actually off of their menu because they just can't make money. They can't charge that much to make a profit.
And who wants to go to a Mexican restaurant where you can't get guacamole?
I have to tell you that I have seen more and more Mexican restaurants that don't have guacamole because they can't afford it. Yeah. And so, but the stories just go on and on and on because they are truly hit the worst when it comes to this inflation factor because they just don't have the offsets or the ability to fend things off the way a large company is, or quite frankly, the price increases that a lot of these large companies can get away with.
Right. It's a matter, again, it gets down to this absorbing the cost of doing business. Right. They can use it to drive their small competitors out of business, then that's what they're going to do.
Yeah. Whenever Amazon says, hey, we support this regulation for something, I go, careful.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about regulatory costs. I know that regulations are now around $3 trillion annually, right? The direct regulatory cost. Talk about the Job Creators Network and regulatory issues, but more to the point, talk about the problem that small businesses face when it comes to regulation.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's just, I talked about Dodd-Frank. I mean, that's one of the reasons why 2,000 community banks went out of business, because the regulatory burden on them couldn't be amortized effectively over as many customers as a large bank does. And so these large companies can survive a heavy regulatory environment. Right. Small businesses can't. Yes. And so, like I said, it's one of the primary things when we started Job Creators Network is to push for lower taxes, lower regulation. Right. Of course, under the Trump administration, that's exactly what he did. He cut red tape. He cut taxes. Small business owners were basically take that free capital and they invested back. And it's not like they went off, to the Bahamas and spent it all. No. They invested back in their businesses, more labor, higher wages, higher benefits, more capacity.
A lot of folks don't understand the concept of opportunity cost. Right. And it's real simple, right? Which is this issue of for every dollar that you're having to spend on some kind of government mandate, that's a dollar you can't put into your business. Every hour your employee is spending, right? Because we measure regulatory costs directly. So if you pay somebody $20 an hour and they're busy doing regulatory work for that hour, you're not losing just $20. You're losing $20 times X. Oh, yeah. So we know that, there's an average of $19 multiplier every dollar that sort of you go down that road. Yeah. Let's talk about some of the individual mandates that are out there. We have the latest one from the Obama administration is they're going after dishwashers. Right. They told us that they weren't going after gas stoves. Again, going back to the restaurant business alone, Talk about how those choices impact a restaurant owner or anybody who's using these things.
It's going to be horrible. I mean,
small hoteliers who can't wash clothes.
Hotels. Well, I was thinking, imagine a Chinese restaurant. I'm sure you've ever seen the back house of a Chinese restaurant.
I have.
The wok's going, the flames are going.
Right.
I'm sitting there. Can you imagine that an electric stovetop and the guy's sitting there 3 hours later still trying to like do the
never get that hot enough. Absolutely true.
It's never going to work. And so things like that just don't make sense. I mean, we announced, actually, I'm sure you heard about this. We announced that we're going to be suing the Biden administration on the EV regulations that they put out. As soon as those are finalized, we'll drop a suit on them. The overreach, the administrative overreach is just crazy, especially out of this administration. Right. We sued in the vaccine mandate. We won. We sued on the college student loan bailout. That's looking pretty good. Fingers crossed. And we'll sue on this as well because the impact to our American way of life is just going to be horrendous.
Talk about the EV mandate and how that impacts the constituency of the Job Creators Network.
Well, I mean, first of all, small business owners, absolutely, but Americans overall. When you think about the impacts auto workers, for example. Like, I'd love to have a conversation with the UAW because guess what? It takes 30% less labor to actually manufacture an EV vehicle than a combustion engine.
Yes.
When you look at the wear and tear, for example, on our roads,
what I'm getting to.
50 to 60% heavier,
right?
Per car. So you can go the same mile, but the wear and tear on that road is going to be a lot heavier.
Yeah, we call that the unintended consequences.
The unintended consequences, right? So I mean, the list truly does go on.
But there's the capital expenditures, right? I mean, it's setting aside whether or not we can produce enough electricity.
Oh, yeah.
Which we already know between 2 and 5 times as much electricity needs to be made. But the idea that everybody who has a delivery vehicle is going to have to go out and buy this, or can
you imagine the farmers?
Go ahead. Yeah, please.
I mean, you're in the middle of your field. And your EV tractor runs out of juice. So what are you going to do? Like, is there a charging station right in the middle of your cornfield?
And if there is a charging station in the middle of your cornfield, what powers that charging station?
Right, exactly. I mean, these are the things you think about, and you just have to almost laugh if it weren't so sad.
Yeah, right. Well, so I mean, and that's I guess where we get down to, which is the issue of where does this go? If we go on this path, what happens with the American economy? Where do you guys at the Job Creators Network see this going? I mean, in essence, right? Actually, before we get to that, let's talk about the essence of your name. Because I don't think we've talked about small businesses and jobs and job creation.
Right.
Talk about that.
I mean, look, small businesses create 2/3 of new job growth is really in the hands of small businesses. 33 million, I mentioned the small businesses, employ 60+ million people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a constituency of more than 90 million hardworking Americans that really are dependent on the success or failure of small businesses. And so when small businesses don't create jobs, the economy falters. The economy stops. And then when you add to that, for example, the impact to the consumer. So right now we're seeing a lot of bad signs that we're predicting for the third quarter. Not only recession, but a slowdown of growth, so stagflation for third quarter. Because you are seeing a slowdown of the consumer. And again, it's not because they're actually spending more because they're getting more. They're spending more and getting less. But you're also seeing from our small business IQ poll that we do on a monthly basis, small business owners basically said, we had a labor problem. We kind of have figured it out. We've made do with what we could. We've had to raise some prices, but pretty much we've brought in family members. We're working triple time. But I think we're going to hold off on trying to find more labor because we don't know what the future is going to look like now. It's not looking great. And that is very worrisome because, again, when 2/3 of new job growth is in the hands of small businesses and they're basically taking their foot off the pedal, that's going to be a bad sign for unemployment as well.
And the other side of this, because one of the things we didn't get into with the regulatory side of it was certainty versus uncertainty. And investment. Explain that a little more.
Look, in any business, especially the small business, has to have some level of certainty, whether it's, from the regulations, their taxes basis, and stuff like that. They had a great environment under the Trump administration with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which we actively worked on that. But when you have this future environment that looks like regulations are actually going to increase, taxes are going to increase. And when you look at the Biden budget plan, 1 million small businesses that file as C corps are going to get hit with that. With the increase in taxes on corporations.
Yeah.
And then that highest tax rate that they want to take to 40+%, that's the most successful small businesses that, again, employ most of our people are going to get taxed with it. And guess what happens? When they get taxed, they employ less.
Yeah.
They pay less. They give less benefits. Or they invest less in their businesses. It's a simple formula. And so this administration just doesn't seem to get it. Or they get it and they don't care.
Yeah, with regulatory costs being at $14,000 per employee per year. If you're a small business with 10 employees, that's $140,000 out the door.
Yeah.
That's, depending on how you look at it, let's say conservatively 3 potential hires for your business that you now can't make, or the capital expenditures you can't make. And if you think that they're going to outlaw gas stoves, or they're going to do this, or they're going to do something else, or you don't know what gas prices are going to look like, so you're not going to make those investments, right? Things are going to slow down.
Yeah, I mean, there's a small Mexican grocery store outside of Chicago that I spoke to a few years back. Their regulatory costs, they estimate, is about $100,000 per year. There you go. When you look at the profit margin on a grocery store, it's about 1%.
Yeah.
I mean, 1%, and they have to cover $100,000 per year of regulatory costs. I mean, that's a crazy, crazy number. And again, administrations like this one just don't seem to get that.
No, it's the other side of it, right? Either they don't get it, which is bad, or they do get it and they don't care, which is bad. So it's either way, it's terrible. So in terms of this agenda that you put out, let's get into some of the details of what you guys are looking at, the bills that that folks have been putting out there. You brought it all together into the toolbox.
Right.
What's on the agenda for JCN?
Well, if you look at the 8 points, 3 of those actually were incorporated into McCarthy's plan, which just passed, which is great. I mentioned Senator Ernst, for example, just last Monday came out with the Prove It Act, introduced legislation on that. Again, highly encourage people to go see that, support that, send those letters into her and to your senators. But it's so important because, again, this one-size-fits-all regulation, that just doesn't work.
Right.
And it kills small businesses. Big business can survive it. I mean, you never really see a big business fighting back a major regulation.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, unless it's so massive.
It's so massive. I mean, maybe the waters of the world.
The waters in the United States, or the new some of the new climate regulations. They've just doubled the cost of what's considered a major rule from $100 million to $200 million.
But if you look at minimum wage, for example, Amazon supports why we should go to $20 minimum wage, $30 minimum wage, right? I mean, it's
let's say everybody gets paid $1,000 an hour
until we drive all of the small businesses out of business, and then we'll come back and we'll cut back on the minimum wage. This is
exactly, it's the old adage from It's a Wonderful Life: Potter's not selling, Potter's buying.
Right? Exactly.
It gets down to it. So let's talk a little bit more about you and your background. Corporate America. Coming into this role, as you said, it's been more than 11 years. You said,
I'm on 11th year.
So what drove you to come and join JCN in the first place?
Well, it's really interesting. So just take a step back, all the way back. So my parents are immigrants. My dad was a tailor. My mom was a housekeeper. Grew up in Chula Vista, California.
Okay.
We were poor as church mice. On trash day, I used to go around with my mom, and we would go through trash cans, literally collecting aluminum cans and newspapers, cashing into the YMCA. And that was our grocery money for the week.
There you go.
Couldn't make ends meet. We would have bake sales, garage sales, craft sales,
whatever you needed to
name
do.
It, right? I always said that my mom was the first entrepreneur that I ever knew.
Actually, wait, before you continue, let's also talk about that, because Latina women are the fastest growing entrepreneurial class in America. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I wrote a book just recently at the beginning of this year.
The book.
Yes. That I launched that really talk about minority entrepreneurship, and really that's the solution.
Yes.
To bridge the economic and racial divide that exists in this country. Now, of course, the Democrats, the progressives, believe it's just more government.
Right.
But I always like to say that What is that old saying that if all you have in your toolbox is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And that's exactly what they do, right? Everything is about more government. Everything's about more government. But we pretty much walked through a lot of situations and showed through data that it really isn't that. There's different situations, family situations. There's different issues. For example, entrepreneur versus non-entrepreneur.
Sure.
In fact, the Black Caucus Foundation did a study that actually showed that a black entrepreneur is 12 times wealthier than a non-entrepreneur black.
Okay, sure, interesting.
So it just basically shows that this is not an issue thing. It's not a black issue, a race issue. It's that one invested in an entrepreneur business, an entrepreneurship path, and the other one did not. And so, we want to encourage more and more entrepreneurs. Again, I don't care if they're Democrats, Republicans, Independents, black, white, yellow, green, to pursue that entrepreneurship because that's the true way of achieving the American dream.
Exactly. This is where exactly I wanted to go because I used to say, because I would get asked about the American dream or what's considered to me, the American dream is the entrepreneur's dream. Oh, yeah. I don't know what drove your parents to come here, but I would suspect it's because they wanted to. So
that's what it was. No, that's exactly what it was. Yeah. It's not owning a house. And I was like, oh, American dream is owning a house. No, it's actually owning your own little business.
Right.
Having some control of your own destiny.
Sure.
And, a lot of our members are folks who are immigrants that came from, socialist countries, in many cases with nothing other than pretty much, a couple bucks in their pocket. They saw the opportunities here, niche opportunities. They built businesses. Now they're hiring people. They're successful restaurateurs, for example. But the interesting thing here is that it seems as though the immigrant population really does appreciate what this country has to offer, much more so, I would say, than our native population does here.
I'm inclined to agree with you.
And it's really unfortunate, and that's pretty much consistent. I mean, I've traveled, for example, we started off going on our bus tours, bring small business tours back, a few years back. And over 4 years, we traveled about 105,000 miles on 2 buses. We hit about 40 states. Getting input from small business owners. Yeah. And I'll tell you, it's pretty consistent what we're seeing. And so, our wish is that more people realize that this is an incredible country of opportunity. Yeah. And I want to emphasize opportunity, not equality.
Right. No, that's important.
But of opportunity. And I think immigrants actually truly understand that.
It's funny because you get out into the real world and you talk to real people and you talk to real small businesses. You never know what you're going to find out. I remember talking to a small business owner in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who was the first person to say to me, I was not a healthcare expert at the time, I'm more so now, we need to decouple insurance from jobs, from occupation. Right. And he made a good case for it, and it got me to think more about it. Yeah. At that launch event up on the hill that I went to, there was a young woman there, Native American, who's in the contracting business. Yeah. And I hadn't understood, and it makes sense because I'm a property rights guy, and I understand the relationship between private property rights and political stability and economic prosperity. Right. It never occurred to me that on a reservation land, you can't get a loan for your business, for your entrepreneurship, because you don't own the land that your house is on. Right. Which is really interesting to me. And and I'm not sure I understand how to go down that road, but that's the important thing about getting out there and talking to people, isn't it?
Yeah, because you understand the issues. Yeah. And it gives you a better sense as to, how to address these issues. I mean, so, when you hear about inflation being an issue, I mean, you really understand when you talk to these small business owners how inflation is a real issue for these guys that they don't have any solution for, because what are they going to do about it? Yeah. It's not like they can buy more, right? It's not like they can hedge, right?
Exactly.
I mean, they are really, in many cases are going to like a Costco, buying the stuff from a Costco. I mean, they are beholden to the ups and downs of the fluctuations of the market.
Sure.
Whereas all these businesses, large businesses, can really shield themselves from that. Yeah. And so you do find out things like that when you pop out there and actually talk to people.
Yeah. No, listen, I mean, that was always the great thing in NFIB was sort of hearing about folks and sort of understanding how the run up in gas prices was impacting people. I'm sorry, I rudely interrupted you as you were talking about your mom. So your mom, you would go out, you would collect stuff to make ends meet. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we made ends meet, and when we couldn't, she'd find a different way. And like I said, she's the first entrepreneur that I truly knew. There you go. I actually dedicated the book to her.
And the title of the book is
Minority Entrepreneurship. And it's a great book overall.
I'll have to read it.
And I think you'll enjoy it. It's a short read.
Listen, it's a subject I'm very passionate about.
Yeah. And it really is, I think, something that we really need to understand as a country, because if we really want to help this racial and economic divide, it's not through more government. No. It's not through repatriations or whatever.
Reparations,
Reparations, out in California. That's not really the solution.
Yeah.
I mean, it's providing an environment where people can achieve their American dream, which is owning their own business, having control of their own destiny.
And we know what happens when you start giving people loads of cash that they've never had before.
I mean, just look at lottery winners.
Well, lottery winners, but also, I mean, just in terms of the general economic impact. When we had people not working and just taking government checks, I mean, that had a huge impact on inflation. You were talking about sort of how you got interested in these things, and that's where we were going.
Yeah. I mean, so it was actually more of a fluke. You know how life works.
Sure.
Life tends to be a fluke. After working in all the corporate America, I ran two businesses, small businesses myself. I sold 2 businesses. And then I ended up running a sales force out in Atlanta, 45 people.
Okay.
And from there, that's where I met Bernie Marcus, and the rest is history. He pretty much said, hey, I'd love for you to do this. You have a great background. And I was like, he's Bernie Marcus. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Why not?
You can't say no. You absolutely can't say no.
Yeah, exactly.
So normally, I've been doing this more and more, and I know my listeners are tired of the explanations, but I have to do it anyway. So I think it's important for folks to understand that policy people, you and me, that there are things that we do outside of public policy. And I should have mentioned this to you before we went on the air, but I'm going to spring it on you anyway. Talk a little bit about your outside interests. When you're not doing this kind of work, where do folks find you? What are you up to?
I'm sleeping.
Yeah, there you go. Listen, there's nothing wrong with that.
Look, I run a lean and mean team.
Yeah.
Just like our small businesses do, and so because of that, we tend to work a lot of hours, 6 days, 7 days a week, and so honestly, when I'm not working, I'm just taking some time off to myself and chilling.
Yeah, that's good. No, listen, there's nothing wrong with it. And I think a lot of folks need to understand this, that if you're an entrepreneur and you're running a small business, it is not a 9-to-5 job.
Oh,
for some folks it can be, but for the most part, you're working all the time, and if you're not working, you're still working.
Right, and you're thinking about the business 24/7. I mean,
that's absolutely true.
Like I said, my 2 businesses, I was always thinking about my small business, and so
what kind of businesses were they?
One was consulting, one was construction.
There you go. Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to do those things.
So but it's fun. I mean, it is fun. As much as it's challenging, it is something fun.
Well, and they say, right, if you're passionate about your work, you never really work a day in your life.
Right.
So that's the good thing about being passionate. How do folks find out more about what the Job Creators Network is up to?
Our website, jobcreatorsnetwork.com, or you can also go to joinjcn.com if people just want to jump right in and join. It's a great organization, really. And if you believe in small business, if you have a small business, if you have a relative that owns a small business, a friend that owns a small business.
You're literally getting into how I'm going to close out the show, which is funny, but yes.
But yeah, I mean, and again, it's funny. I got to say this really quickly. A couple of years back with the Tax and Jobs Act, I went on multiple stops with Vice President Pence. We did about 14 stops with him. And I would always ask the question, the rooms were 500, 600, 700 people. And I would always ask 3 separate questions, like how many people own your own business, about a third of the room. How many people know a family member or friend, another third, and then how many people work at a small business. So everybody would pretty much raise their hand.
Sure,
everybody's impacted by small business 100%. In this country. Everybody. You shop a small business. I mean, I can guarantee you today, you probably went to a small business and shopped it. I did 100%, too. Yes. I went downstairs and grabbed my bagel.
Yeah, there you go.
So there's always an impact somehow. And we just don't understand that. And this country really needs to, quite frankly, make more hay out of the fact that small businesses are so important to our communities.
And the name of the book again?
It's Minority Entrepreneurship. Yes. It's on Amazon, and hopefully people will get that.
Well, Alfredo Ortiz, thank you so very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
This has been yet another episode of the Lunch Hour with Federal Newswire. And as Alfredo just teed up for me, if you're watching us, you can find us wherever fine podcasts are found. If you are listening to us, you can also watch this interview on YouTube. Please tell your friends, tell your family members, tell your family members' friends, your friends' family members all about this. I am your host, Andrew Langer. Enjoy the rest of your lunch.
This has been the Federal Newswire Lunch Hour Podcast, hosted by Andrew Langer. Check out the Federal Newswire's family of websites, as well as their social media stream.